Hi, I'm Joseph, and I grew up living in a tiny house with a large family. I'd never had my own room. My 6 brothers and I slept in one shared bedroom, 2 bunk beds, and one tiny cot where my youngest siblings slept together. It was all my mom and dad could afford. I'm even surprised at how they managed to fit all those beds in that small room. But somehow, we made do. We were poor, but Mom and Dad made sure we never got hungry, and at the very least, we all loved each other, and we were happy. But it wasn't always easy, especially not for my girlfriend. I was the only one old enough to be working, so I worked to help my parents raise my siblings. And it was Macy's biggest pet peeve when I would cancel on a date because I had to fetch my brothers from school or watch them for the day. I didn't have much in the way of an allowance. Most of the time, I just got a couple dollars from my mom. And so dating wasn't really something I could afford, and Macy surely wasn't cheap to date. She would always make it a rule that we can only go on dates if I was spending money on her, money I didn't have. So sometimes I would borrow from cousins, or even from my brothers, if they had any to spare. One time I took her to this nice little drive-in theater and she threw a fit. Seriously, Joe? We're eating outside? Watching a movie while there's bugs everywhere? Couldn't you have just taken us to a normal restaurant? I can't afford a restaurant tonight, babe. That's always your excuse. But I got you something. Macy's eyes suddenly changed and widened with glee. I gave her a clumsily wrapped present, and when she saw the velvet box, she kissed me. "Oh, thank you, But when she opened it, her face fell. "What's this?" "The bracelet, the one you've always wanted." "A fake one?" "It's all I could afford." "That's always your excuse. Why can't you be a normal boyfriend and buy me stuff? You're so poor." I can't do this anymore. You will never be someone who can make me happy." She stood up and left, and she never talked to me again. I tried for weeks to contact her, but she would ignore my texts and screen my calls. Eventually, I had to face the truth that we were done. At least one good thing happened. My best friend, Fred, had a massive stroke of luck. We had been best friends since kindergarten, and he lived right next door to us. On the day after Macy and I broke up, he won a small lottery. It had been a few $100,000. He never really told us the exact prize, but I was just so happy for him that his family could finally move out of our poor neighborhood. He bought a new house and a new car, and he invited me and my family to party to celebrate his win. But when I got there, I was surprised to see Macy. I walked towards her to talk to her, but Fred put his arms around her and smiled at me. "Hey, sorry, bud. I meant to tell you, but I forgot." Macy was wearing the bracelet she had always wanted, the genuine one, and she had rings and earrings and a necklace to match. It broke my heart that my own best friend did me like that, and my girlfriend left me for money. That night, after I cried myself to sleep, I vowed I would never let that happen again. I started working for a company downtown. It didn't pay much, and I was only a janitor, but I couldn't really get another job as a high school dropout at the time. But I vowed I would work my way up, and I vowed I would get my family out of poverty. It turned out that Fred and my ex also worked there, and when they saw me, they laughed at me for being a janitor. Fred and Macy would constantly make work for me. They'd leave messes on purpose. They would tip over my mop bucket or spill coffee into the carpet, and I would have to work late and tidy up all the messes they made. One time, they even pulled a prank on me and locked me in the janitor's closet for an entire night. I was lucky that the guard heard me. It was 5 a.m. when I got home, and all I had time left for was to get ready and go back to work. One day, Fred told me to take his car and wash it for him. "That's not part of my job, Fred." "It is now. I know you need the money." He dangled a $100 bill in front of me, and although it hurt my pride, I took it. I drove his car home and washed it there so nobody would see me. But my parents were unexpectedly home, and they cried when I shared the hardships I had been going through at work. I'm sorry, son. You shouldn't have to go through all this for us. It was our own fault. We flew too close to the sun and put our lives in danger, and now you're paying the price. What do you mean? That was the moment I learned the truth about our family. Mom and Dad were the owners of a massive corporation, and when they went against a rival, those rivals moved to put me and my siblings at risk of their retaliation. Mom and Dad feared what the rivals would do to us, and so they went into hiding, concealing our identities and running their company from the shadows. We were living as paupers for our own safety, and now the secret was out. And since the company that posed the danger just recently folded, Mom and Dad said it was finally time to come out of hiding. I drove Fred's car back to the office and tossed the keys back at him.
Easy now. How dare you toss my keys at me like that?
He looked me up and down and just noticed the expensive suit I was wearing. He was so confused how a mere janitor could afford an Armani suit. Careful what you say to me. You don't want to piss off your new boss. I walked confidently into the boardroom. Every girl in the office stared at the new guy in the expensive suit. Most of them didn't even realize that I was the janitor who had been working there for months. I got into the boardroom and saw Macy there. All the executives and their assistants were called in. Fred waited outside, curious to find out what was happening. As soon as Macy saw me in the conference room, she mouthed to Fred, "What is he doing here?" Fred could only shrug his shoulders. Hey you, janitor, get everyone's coffee orders, right this instant." "I'm sorry, Macy, but that's simply not my job. Why don't you, as an assistant, do that?" She reached for a glass of water behind her and threw it at my face. "How dare you speak to me like that? You're just a janitor. Now do your job and clean up this mess you made me do. And fetch me my coffee while you're at it." Everyone's eyes were on us, and then from behind my ex came my new assistant. "And you are just an assistant." "Boss, here's your coffee." "Oh my God, what happened?" She fumbled around for a handkerchief and started wiping my face and suit. "Boss?" I turned to the executives and addressed them. "I called you all in here today to inform you that there will be some restructuring in the company. My family is back, and we will resume running the company no longer in the shadows as before. My name is Joseph, and I'm your new CEO." The shock on Fred and Macy's faces were indescribable. It almost made me laugh. Realizing her error, Macy dropped to her knees, and when she looked around and Fred was still standing there in complete shock, she pulled him down with her to beg for my forgiveness. We're so sorry. We didn't know." I smiled at her. Neither did I until this morning, and I have Fred to thank for that. If he hadn't sent me to do his errands, I wouldn't have found out. Sad to say, this company will not tolerate the way you behaved towards a former janitor. "I never should have. I'm sorry. Please don't fire us." I smiled again and told my assistant to head to HR and fetch their termination notices.
No, please. I'm bankrupt. I need this job. I've already burned through all my lottery winnings. This Macy has spent it all on clothes and jewelry.
I helped my old friend up and patted his shoulder. That's too bad. It sounds like a you problem, bud. I adjourned the meeting and saw the executives out, telling them that I would like to see them one by one in the morning to conduct an evaluation of how the company had been running. And then I left to go on a date. Fred and Macy followed me downstairs, sobbing and begging for me to change my mind. "Please, babe, it was a mistake. I never meant to break up with you. I knew you were special. Please take me back." I turned around, and just in time, my date arrived behind them. Why would I date you when all you wanted from me was money? And besides, if I have to spoil someone, why not someone whose league's prettier than you? I waved goodbye as Macy and Fred were dragged away by the building security. I kissed my date, and we drove away in my brand new Mercedes.